Gordon Gekko, making Bud his fall guy. Gordon Gekko never touches the trade himself, and that's the whole trick. In Wall Street, Gekko builds his empire on inside information, but he never risks his own hands getting dirty. He recruits an ambitious young broker, Bud Fox, and lets ambition do the rest. Every tip Gekko passes along looks like mentorship. Every trade Bud makes looks like his own decision, but the money always lands right before the news break, and the risk always lands on Bud, not Gekko. If regulators come knocking, there's a paper trail leading straight to an eager rookie, not the man pulling the strings. Gekko doesn't need to break the law. He needs someone else willing to break it for him, someone whose name ends up on the trade instead of his. And that's why he stays untouchable long after his proc is already drowning. Noah Cross, manufacturing a fake drought. Noah Cross doesn't need to steal water, he just needs everyone to believe there isn't any. In Chinatown, a drought is quietly manufactured while Cross buys up dried out farmland under names that don't belong to him. Dead men's name, to be exact. Nobody questions land deeds signed by people who can't object. While the public panics over a water shortage, Cross positions himself to control where that water eventually flows and who profits when it does. The scheme hides behind bureaucracy instead of brute force, quiet paperwork doing what threats never could, while the city looks the other way. Once anyone connects the names on those deeds, the land already belongs to him. Cross wins not by force, but by making corruption look like ordinary business, which is exactly why this villain stays so unsettling. He never once has to raise his voice. Alonzo Harris, compromising his own partner. Alonzo Harris doesn't just break the rules, he makes sure someone else breaks them with him. In training day, Alonzo spends one entire shift orchestrating a fake bust, using it to rob dealers while dragging his new partner along for the ride. Every step looks like training, a signature here, a test there, a moment where the rookie makes a call he can't take back. None of it happens by accident. Alonzo isn't only stealing money, he's building leverage, making sure his partner is compromised before the day even ends. If anything goes wrong, there are two names on the paperwork, not one. The real move here isn't the robbery, it's turning an outsider into a witness who can't talk without incriminating himself. By sundown, staying silent has stopped being loyalty and started being survival, and Alonzo planned it that way from the very first hour. Immortan Joe, controlling everyone through water. Immortan Joe never fires a single shot to control his people. He controls the water instead. In Mad Max, Fury Road, an entire population lives beneath a mountain that hoards the one resource they can't survive without. Joe releases it in controlled bursts, just enough to keep hope alive, never enough to remove the need for him. This isn't worship people choose freely, it's worship he engineers drop by drop. Citizens climb toward the spray, grateful for scraps, while Joe watches from above like a god granting mercy. The same logic extends to fuel and food, every resource funneled through him alone. No army could hold a wasteland this large through force, but scarcity does the job perfectly. People don't rebel against the hand that occasionally lets them drink. They wait for it, and that waiting keeps an empire like this standing far longer than fear ever could. Hans Landa, switching sides at the perfect time. Hans Landa never commits to a side he can't abandon. In Inglourious Bastards, Landa spends the war reading people instead of fighting them, extracting confessions through patience rather than force. But his real genius shows near the end. Long before Germany's collapse becomes obvious to everyone else, Landa is already negotiating his own exit, quietly trading information for immunity and reward. His loyalty was never to an ideology, only to whichever outcome kept him alive and comfortable. While others fight for a cause, Landa positions himself as valuable to both sides at once, useful enough to survive no matter who wins. His cruelty, it turns out, was never personal, only practical. And when the war finally ends, Landa isn't punished for what he did. He's rewarded for knowing exactly when to stop doing it. Anton Chigurh, tracking the stolen money. Anton Chigurh doesn't chase his target, he lets the money lead him there. In No Country for Old Men, a fortune goes missing, and a killer follows not by guesswork, but by a tracking device hidden inside the case itself. Every quiet, methodical move Chigurh makes looks patient, because it is. He doesn't need to search a whole state when the money is already telling him exactly where to go. The coin flips, the code of conduct, the eerie calm, all of it distracts from the simplest truth. Chigurh isn't hunting blindly, he built the hunt to find itself. And because his targets never suspect the case they're protecting is also betraying them, they lead him straight to their own door. Chigurh isn't terrifying because he gets lucky, he's terrifying because his preparation makes the outcome feel like it was always going to happen. Jigsaw, playing dead in plain sight. For most of Saw, there's a body lying on that bathroom floor, except it was never a body at all. John Kramer plays dead in plain sight for hours, using the assumption that a corpse can't be a threat to observe his victims completely unnoticed. Every detail that looked irrelevant earlier suddenly means something once the truth comes out. The stillness, the silence, the way no one in the room ever thinks to check. Kramer's trap was never just the chains or the tools scattered around the room. It ran on something quieter than that, the audience's own assumption and the character's assumption that stillness means harmless. Once that reveal lands, the entire film demands a second look. Every earlier scene plays differently once you know who was actually watching, because the real trap here was psychological long before it was ever physical. Killmonger, using Wakanda's laws against it. Eric Killmonger doesn't invade Wakanda, he gets Wakanda to invite him in. In Black Panther, Killmonger spends years building a military record for one specific purpose, making himself valuable enough that tradition itself grants him an audience with the throne. He doesn't need to break through Wakanda's defenses, because Wakandan law creates the opening for him. A stolen artifact becomes bait, a staged capture becomes an entrance. Once he's standing in the throne room, he hasn't broken a single rule the kingdom lives by. He's simply the first outsider clever enough to use those rules as a weapon. That's the part that makes his plan so effective. He isn't fighting the system, he's exploiting exactly how it already works. And by then he's already inside, already holding a claim the kingdom itself has to take seriously. Bane, isolating Gotham before the attack. Bane hands Gotham a bomb, then tells the city it's already been triggered. In The Dark Knight Rises, before Gotham even understands the scale of the threat, Bane cuts it off completely, destroying the bridges and tunnels that connect it to the outside world. Isolation happens first, panic follows naturally after. With no way out and no help coming in, the city turns on itself, exactly as Bane intended. He doesn't need an army patrolling every street, because fear does that work for him. People stop trusting institutions, stop trusting each other, and start policing their own chaos, while Bane simply watches it unfold. The bomb almost becomes secondary to the terror of not knowing when it goes off, because the real weapon was never the explosive, it was cutting the city off from anyone who could help. Loki surrendering to divide the Avengers. Loki surrenders without a fight, and that should have been the first warning. In the Avengers, Loki allows himself to be captured almost too easily, letting the team believe they've won before anything has really begun. Once inside the helicarrier, his real plan starts moving. He doesn't need to escape by force, he just needs the team distrusting each other at the exact right moment, using a compromised asset already planted among them to turn allies into obstacles. What follows isn't random chaos, it's carefully timed disruption. Every distraction, every argument, every moment of confusion happens exactly when it benefits him most. Loki was never trying to win the fight happening outside the ship, he was only ever trying to win the one happening inside it. And once the team finally realizes that, the damage meant to divide them is already done.